So what's going on guys, Kades here and welcome back to a brand new video. For today I will show you the best Lost Ark's PvP meta tier list in 22 for new players. So Lost Ark was just released to EU and NA and right now we have 15 different and unique classes to choose from. So you may be wondering which class is the best for PvP. And by PvP I mean all the content like 3v3, 1v1 and any other type of player versus player arenas and much more. So I've done a bunch of testing and here's the best tier list that you've been waiting for. And just before we start, I have made a full 30-minute video on the best PvP builds for all classes. So no matter which class you choose to play from this list, check my PvP build video and there you will find the best builds. So then with all this said, let's get right into it. Okay, so then starting with the best PvP class, which is actually the only one that gets to be in the S tier, and it is the Paladin. So this is a tanky support class in PvP. He plays very well with offensive classes because of Holy Protection and Heavenly Blessing skills. This class as well gives his team more control over the battlefield, but make no mistake, because the Paladin is also capable of dealing damage. And lastly, you can choose to amplify your own damage or instead support your team with more defensives. The biggest downside for this class in PvP is the lack of push immunity. That means that if you don't want to get your skills interrupted, you have to avoid damage and you can't just use all of your abilities all at once. So then in my quick summary, the Paladin class has high peel, he deals decent damage and most importantly, this class can provide offensive or defensive support, depending on your team. And then moving over to the negatives, and this class has huge lack of push immunity, so if you don't play it right, your skills can get interrupted. And then lastly, as you are a support class, you are relying on your team, and that's about it. So then moving over to the second class, which I put at the A tier, and it is the Deadblade. So this class has big AoE skills with high damage, and she has as well a lot of combos to destroy your enemy's team. Deathblade is basically like a Lost Ark's rogue type of class that utilizes speed and crowd control. In PvP, this class revolves around quick catches with her dashes and crowd control. She is a hit and run specialist that goes in when the time is right and gets out very quickly. Her speed and high protected skills allow her to climb high in the 3v3 and 1v1 tier list, making her an excellent choice for old or new players to get into. So then in my summary, this class is high mobility, very high damage and you have a very good crowd control. And lastly, as you have the high push immunity, which means that most of your skills can't get interrupted. And then for the negatives, the Deathblade is quite squishy, which means that you can't handle too much damage. Then as well, most of your DPS skills have high cooldowns. And lastly, almost all of your skills are close range, and that's about it. So then moving over to the third class, which is the Berserker, and we put it right next to the Deadblade class. So the Berserker is Lost Ark's traditional warrior class, with a slight twist. He is fast, beefy and can dish out serious damage when given the opportunity. This gives the Berserker a very high rank on the PvP tier list. In 3v3 arenas, the Berserker plays more like a hit and run assassin than a full melee class. That is mainly because his skills in PvP have high cooldowns, and he can get limited by mana issues as well. But don't worry, because his skills have devastating impact in the battle if used properly. So then in a quick summary, this class is high damage and he has good mobility and high basic stats. And then lastly, the Berserker has good push immunity, which means that he can't easily get interrupted. But then for the downsides, as this class has few of them. So for example, he has high cooldowns, he can sometimes get into a mana issues, the Berserker playstyle can be somewhat predictable, and lastly, he is not immune to hard crowd control skills, and that's about it. So then moving over to the next class, which is the Artillerist, and we want to put him in the A tier. So the Artillerist is Lost Ark's guy with a massive rocket launcher type of class. He specializes in heavy weaponry and turns into a stationary turret to decimate his opponents. Even though this class can be slow, he makes up for it with his big AoE damage. In PvP, the Artillerist is a combo-reliant class that relies on his stuns to deal big damage. The combos can deal half of a player's HP or even more if it lands correctly, but sadly these skills can be dodged quite easily, so positioning and landing the stun is very important. This class is easy to get into and you can even abuse newer players if they get caught in one of your traps. So then in my summary, this class is high damage, easy to pick up and learn, and he has decent zone control. And lastly, the Artillerist pairs up very good with other melee classes. And then for the negatives, this class is predictable, he has low mobility and almost non-existing push immunity, which means that you can get easily interrupted, and that's about it. So then for the 5th class we have the Shadowhunter, and we want to put him right into the B tier. So the Shadowhunter is Lost Ark's demonic class. Her unique identity allows her to transform into a demon, giving her access to high damage skills. She has 2 different playstyles that can revolve around ranged or melee combat. In PvP, the Shadowhunter relies on quick catches with her dashes and long range engagements. She is a hit and run specialist that goes in when the time is right and escapes with ease. She ranks very high in the PvP tier list because of her ability to be extremely mobile ranged class that doesn't sacrifice damage because of her demonic form. So then in my summary, this class is high mobility, high damage, and if you're a good player you can easily carry your team. But then for the negatives, the Shadowhunter is very reliant on his skill shots, and this class has no push immunity, so you can get stunned or interrupted very easily, and that's about it. So then going over to the next class, which is the Sorceress, and we want to put her right next to the Shadowhunter. So Sorceress is your traditional mage class, which specializes in range combat. This class has good skill ceiling, but can be easy to pick up and learn as well. She has many flexible combo options, and can potentially take over a battle with her mobility and low cooldowns. This class ranks decently on the overall PvP tier list. Even though her damage is very high, most of it depends if you can land your skill shots. She is very vulnerable when there isn't enough identity gauge for teleports. So then in my summary, the Sorceress has good peels, high mobility, and then as well she is very high damage. But then on the other hand, she is very squishy. Most of her damage depends on landing your skill shots, and she has low push immunity, which means that she can get stunned quite easily, and that's about it. Okay, so then moving over to the next class, which is the Gunlancer, and we put him in the B tier category. So the Gunlancer is one of the Lost Ark's best tanks in the game. Not only he can protect himself, but as well provide a bunch of support to his teammates. Then as well be aware that the Gunlancer is the only class whose spacebar moves them backwards. This can be a huge turnoff for most of the players, but after a few days of gameplay you will get used to it. In PvP, the Gunlancer's greatest strength lies in his supportive capabilities. But don't let his looks fool you, because he can deal respectable amounts of damage as well. And then lastly, be aware that you will be everyone's friend if you want to play this class, because the Gunlancer is very popular and most PvP players want this class in their team. So then in my summary, this class has good support, he can do high disruption, and then lastly he has high survivability and high push immunity, which means that he can't get easily stunned. So then for the negatives, this class requires a bit of skill to use to his maximum potential. Then as well you sometimes may run into a mana issues, and then lastly your damage can be low, and that's about it. Okay, so then for the 9th class we have the Sharpshooter, and we want to include him in the B tier. So the Sharpshooter is Lost Ark's traditional archer class. He summons a faithful bird companion that helps him in battle. In PvP, the Sharpshooter plays more like a hit and run assassin, so with his stealth he can serve as a ranged initiator and a huge damage dealer to the enemy backline. His damage is quite high, and he is an excellent choice for someone looking to play as a ranged bow player. With proper positioning and good aim, this class can be devastating in battle. So then in a quick summary, this class has stealth, good peels, very good mobility, and good push immunity. And then for the negatives, the Sharpshooter is quite squishy, a lot of his damage depends on RNG. His high DPS skills have long cooldowns, and lastly, to play this class, it will require for you to have good positioning, and that's about it. So then moving over to the next one, which we want to put him right next to the Sharpshooter, and it is the Soulfist class. So the Soulfist is quite unique mid-range fighter class that relies on high burst damage and mobility. She has a energy system called Hype, and once your energy is depleted, you cannot perform any additional skills until it's recharged. In PvP, the Soulfist relies on mid-range skills and their hype windows. There are 3 stages of hype that grants increasing stats and energy restoration. Knowing when to abuse these hype windows will allow you to get very good combos on the enemy players. So then in my summary, this class has high mobility, he can give his team more synergy buffs, and lastly he has good crowd control. But then on the other hand, this class is very skill shot reliant, and you have to be very careful about your identity management, which is this hype resource, and that's about it. So then going over to the last and final B tier class, which is the Bard. So this is a support class that with her music provides a wide variety of supportive skills. In PvP, the Bard plays like your traditional support class. Even though you will do low damage, she makes up for it with great defensive skills and buffs. She ranks decent on the PvP tier list, with only the Paladin class challenging her supportive position. Just having a support on your team alone can give you an extra advantage before the battle even starts. Navigating the PvP arena can be tricky at first, but a well-played Bard can be the difference between winning and losing a match. So then in my summary, the Bard is a support class, which means that you'll be always wanted on any PvP team. Then as well you will provide for other players the best buffs and great peels. And lastly, you have a high push immunity. And then for the negatives, this class has low base stats. As you are a support, you are very team reliant. And then lastly, to play this class you need to understand the game and have good positioning, and that's about it. So then going over to the next one, which is the Striker class, and this time we want to put him in the last C tier. So the Striker is a fighter class that focuses on quick engagements and combos. Even though he doesn't have a lot of protected moves, he makes up with it with his high disruption and mobility. In PvP, the Striker revolves around pressuring the opposition's backline with his hit and run playstyle. There are a bunch of ways this class can engage. Picking the right engagement and targets will allow you to shine on this class. One of his most defining traits is Lightning Tiger Strike skill, which is a powerful disruption skill that gives him push immunity and much more. So then in my summary, the Striker is a high mobility and high disruption class. And then for the negatives, most of his combos are very heavy and take bunch of animation time. And then lastly, this class has low push immunity, and that's about it. So then moving over to the next class, which is the Gunslinger, and we want to include him right in the C tier category. So the Gunslinger is Lost Ark's traditional gunner class. His unique identity allows him to swap between 3 different weapons. Pistol skills are used for mobility and engagement, then the shotgun is used for damage, and the sniper is mainly used for long-range one-shot kills. In PvP, the Gunslinger revolves around quick catches with her sniper and pistol combo. The ability to dance around the arena with lethal skills gives her a decent ranking on the PvP tier list. If you play it well, this class is a strong carry that is hard to stop. So then in my summary, the Gunslinger has high mobility with high damage and high push immunity as well. And then for the negatives, this class is very squishy. And lastly, for newer players, it might be difficult to keep on swapping between 3 different weapons, while at the same time participating in PvP, and that's about it. So then for one of the last classes, we have the Wardancer, and we want to include her right in the C tier. So the Wardancer is Lost Ark's agile fighter class that focuses on quick engagements and combos. Even though she doesn't have a lot of protected moves, she makes that up with her defensives and disruptions. In PvP, the Wardancer revolves around pressuring the opposition's backline with her hit and run playstyle. There are a lot of ways this class can engage. Picking the right engagement and targets will allow you to shine on this class. She's a decent class in 3v3s when played right. So then in my final summary, this class has high mobility and high defenses. Then as well you get good disruption and good team synergy buffs. But then on the other hand, you will have sometimes mana issues. This class has no push immunity and lacks in crowd control, and that's about it. So then moving over to the next class, which is the Deadeye. So this class is Lost Ark's traditional gunner. His unique identity allows him to swap between 3 different weapons, which gives him a wide range of gameplay. Pistol skills are used for mobility and engagement. Shotgun is used for medium damage, and then lastly the sniper is mainly used to pick off kills and range damage. Then in PvP, the Deadeye revolves around quick catches with his sniper and pistol combo. The ability to dance around the arena with lethal skills give him a good ranking on the PvP tier list. Enforce, execution, and aimed shot skills are his signature moves. If played well, this class is strong carry that is hard to stop. So then in a quick summary, this class is high mobility and high damage, and lastly you get a high push immunity as well. And then for the negatives, this class is pretty squishy. To get the maximum damage it will require decent skill ceiling, and then lastly you will need to swap between 3 different weapons, which at sometimes might seem overwhelming, and that's about it. So then for the last and final class, we have the Scrapper, and we want to put him right in the C tier category. So the Scrapper is Lost Ark's beefiest fighter class, and she throws herself at the enemy with her speed and disruptive abilities, which makes her a very annoying class to play against. In PvP, the Scrapper's unique identity offers her great versatility. Managing shock and stamina energy properly, coupled with low cooldowns, allows her to keep up consistent pressure on the backline enemies. 2 dashes for her spacebar leaves plenty of room for massive outplay potential. While mostly focused on a hit and run playstyle, she is able to stick to the target if necessary. If given the opportunity, she can do even bunch of great damage. So then in my summary, this class is high mobility and high disruption. And then lastly, you have a good crowd control. And then for the negatives, most of your skills have small hitboxes, and you will struggle against ranged classes, and that's about it. So with that said, I really do appreciate everyone for watching guys, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any suggestions, feedback, or maybe you have a different idea about a class on this PvP tier list, then you're feel free to leave your comments in the comment section down below. And while you're doing that, please click like, subscribe, and enable that notification bell, so this way you could support the channel and you won't miss any more amazing content from me. With all this said, you have an amazing day, and I'll catch you in my next video. So take it easy, peace.
Yo, I ain't here